It's off. Are we sponsored by Tim Hortons today?
We should have Thunder Cups.
I know where some are, but we can be sponsored by the biggest coffee shop in Canada.
Right.
All right. Welcome to AgWarriors, episode 2.
Sounds legit.
Sounds legit. So here today with my good friend, Steve Langston, who his company is Dirty T-Shirt Productions. Steve, we've known each other for, a long time. How long have we been working together?
I think I came down to Louisville for the 5th birthday party.
So 5 years.
Yeah.
5 years you've been a part of the Thunder family.
Yeah, at least.
At least 5 years. So we always talk about the Thunder family. You've been around for a long time. What's the Thunder family mean to you? Like, what is the Thunder family? We were joking that it's like the mafia, and Steve Casting and Dixie are our enforcers. Where do you fit into the Thunder family?
Well, I guess I fit into the Thunder family by doing video production. That's kind of the role that I've played. So, typically when, Thunderstruck gets a new client, and typically part of the negotiation process is that I'll be sending my boy Steve down to whatever small town in North America that you happen to live in. And, we'll typically go in, shoot as much content as we possibly can, still photography and video that kind of creates the basis for the upgraded marketing efforts moving forward. So
you've done a lot of that. You've almost died. Remember that Jenkins trip? So Jenkins Iron and Steel, longtime member of the Thunder family, sent you down there. Tell us a little bit about what happened on that shoot that we can talk about.
Yeah,
legally.
we're down in Long Prairie, and they were on a skid steer manufacturing company and
attachment manufacturing, same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah,
American made,
made in America.
And we're out golfing, and basically we saw they were using one of the attachments on the golf course, and we were off the clock at this point. Our hair was down a little bit, and so we thought, well, we better go get some footage of this being demonstrated. And so they had a skid steer with some form of a bucket, and they were
skeleton grapple
something, pushing on this tree so that when they cut it down, hopefully it would go where they wanted it to. And I thought I was way out in the safe zone. I was 90 degrees to the side, I felt like, and this tree, instead of going like anywhere forward, just like went completely to the left. And
you were laying on the ground completely prone, because that's what, when you're working with Dirty T, we got to get the shot. Yeah.
And we had some branches comb my hair, and it was scary, but it gave me a new respect for trees moving forward. We were cutting a tree down a few days ago, and just because you want a tree to fall somewhere does not mean that that's where it's going to fall. So
where did you, Dirty T-Shirt Productions was around, long before we started working with you, and you do a lot of different things. And the reason I wanted to have you on AgWarriors is because you're not just in ag, but you do a lot in ag. Where did your passion for storytelling in agriculture come from?
So I started working in agriculture. Dirty T-Shirt Productions is about 13 years old. Started when I was 26, turning 40 in September.
Ooh, you're getting old.
I'm getting old. I feel old. But, my first client was Adam Jet Agriculture, a company out of Brandon that I'm still working with today. And they had seen some of the work that I had done, and they were like, hey, come on out and let's shoot some videos. And so from that experience to interview a farmer, especially on seeding. Seeding's kind of a complex, subject. It's probably the most complex of all of the agricultural activities, maybe outside of the really intense agronomy stuff. But so I just kind of had to learn about it. Like, what's this? What's a furrow? What's a shank? What's, seed to soil separation? What's seed safety? What's starter fertilizer? All these types of things I had to kind of learn about. And so in order to be able to interview someone appropriately. So basically started learning there. And then you all of a sudden find yourself driving across the prairies with some agricultural salesman. And, there's not that much to talk about. So we'd just be basically driving down the road. I'd be like, hey, what's going on there? What's he pulling behind? Oh, that's liquid fertilizer. That's granular. That's a sprayer, and basically just having conversations with clients, have a couple of good friends that are farmers, So, I'd always see a product and then I'd go and ask the farmer for their opinion on the product because always the salesperson's telling them.
Always the best.
Always the best. Yeah. And so then to go and ask the farmer, like, well, why wouldn't you use that on your farm? And, them explain to me those types of differences. And then I pitched a TV show called Crop Kings with the Hargraves family out of Brandon that got picked up by Discovery Canada. We did 5 short episodes. That was further introduction into the agricultural world.
And then you got involved in the Thunder family.
Then I made one of my 4 cold calls in my life to Kristen Phillips at Ag Days, and we kicked off a great relationship. That's probably been
4 cold calls in your whole life.
Probably 4 cold calls.
The rest has been organic.
Yeah. And then I started working at Ag Days. Ag Day sent out an email that said, Steve's going to be here. They didn't feel like they could fill my entire week, so they wanted to see if anyone else needed some video help. They sent out an email that said, hey, if you want to do video production, Steve's going to be on site. I offered I'll come to your booth and shoot a video for you in half an hour. I think it was $250. Jeremy bought 8 of them and
booked you for a day.
It booked me for a day, and we wandered around, met all the interesting people. I think Jacob was there, and
from Mud Smith,
and a few others, and that's kind of what kicked it off. And then, you said, "Hey, we're going to Kentucky in February," and
National Farm Machinery
Show, driving down, and I thought, well, whatever, we'll figure it out, see what these guys are all about. So piled into the car and hit the road.
So that was the first. So that road trip, and to be fair about that, I had said, we're going to Kentucky. What do you think? And you're like, man, we need to shoot a series. A series. This was your idea. It wasn't our idea. I said, we need to shoot a series kind of documenting what happens on the road. What's it like? Because we've always talked about it being trade show warriors, right? Like that's, because it's a grind. We're kind of like carnies at times because you go from show to show and you talk to farmers, and it's not easy, right? Like it can be a grind. I mean, you do 25 shows a year and you're like, let's document it. Mm-hmm. How was that experience?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, basically I took a storytelling approach as opposed to a marketing approach. So we did, one episode for each day that we were on the road. So, started with kind of the drive down and the background on the company, then setup and why setup's important and how we do all that. And then, through the event. So it was interesting. I think it gave, your team a glimpse into how I do things. And, there was some growing pains there for sure.
Lost all the footage one day. We didn't lose it, but
the hard drives were temporarily missing. But that's what happens when you've been on the road for 11 days. But they were found. They were safe and sound right where I tucked them away. But and I mean that's part of it. I was at doing things when you're like tired and 11 days on the road. It's like it's not for the faint of heart, right? I'm trying to keep like
sleep is for the weak.
Trying to keep all of this stuff organized, and you're out and about, and that's why video can be challenging because you're on the road. I've been on the road for a month right now, and you're probably not operating at optimal speed or efficiency, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. I mean, you just grind. That's the whole premise of why we wanted to have you on. I mean, you have been on the road for a month straight, and you were at an event, a huge ag event last week. You're at our event this week. Do you have any time off? Like, or where are you next?
I've been rolling. I'm going to Ag Smart in Olds on Monday night to Thursday, and then Rockin' the Fields of Mendoza, another rock festival. Done 3 music festivals, 1 carnival, ran my own film festival, and a few other client projects all in the month of July. So it's been intense.
It's been intense. So, a lot of the people that are in the Thunder family, and anyone, I don't think they really know how unique you are. So I want to dive into a little bit of that. Biked across Canada and wrote a book. What was that about? What made you wake up and say, hey, I want to do this?
Well, I graduated university with a Bachelor of Management degree when I was probably 23 from the University of Lethbridge, one of the top 5 universities in all of Alberta.
Plug.
There's only 3, so. I just kind of had booked 3 years of my life for global travel. That was something I thought was really important, was to go see the world, and started chatting with people about what should I do, where should I go. And one of my friends was like, "Oh, you should try bike touring." I was like, "Well, what's that?" It's like basically you hop on your bike, you have a little trailer, and you just go. So he gave me a guidebook called Bicycling the Pacific Coast, and I biked from Vancouver up north to Powell River, across to Comox, and then all the way.
Powell River, BC.
Yeah, we went north first,
Yeah.
and then all the way down to Tijuana, Mexico. So that took me about 100 days, and it was unbelievable.
What's the craziest thing that happened on that bike trip that we can talk about?
Oh, it's all crazy. Like the coolest couple of the like really cool things was just like, getting through the avenue, getting to the Avenue of the Giants, and like, biking through this just like magical forest where all the trees are, the size of a house, and perfectly manicured asphalt road. And, we're in Northern California, so things were elevated
Sequoia
a little
trees.
bit. Yeah, the giant redwoods. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was very cool.
Things were elevated. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's Northern California. It's different than Southern Oregon. And then, so that was very, I'll always remember that. And then just being north of San Francisco, got to this little state park and got my little tent city set up. And
So you tented this whole time?
way completely unsupported. Yeah. And then
No support vehicles, no nothing.
Nothing. Just a good attitude. And so I set up my camp, come over the hill, and literally the Golden Gate Bridge in all of San Francisco is like right there. And I kind of had no idea. So certainly I'll remember that. I'll certainly remember getting poison ivy on every inch of my body. And
In California?
Central California. And I just being like bad.
What do you do?
I just kept biking. I just got totally doped up on antihistamines, and I just kept going.
It's a miracle you're alive almost.
It's always a miracle I'm alive. So that was that's how I wrote I used the guidebook for biking down the Pacific Coast, and I just remember thinking, I probably wouldn't have been able to do this without this guidebook. So the guidebook certainly was transformational, because it would take you like park to park. And
Right. This is how you do it if you're stupid enough to bike all the way down the coast.
This is how you do it.
Unsupported.
And then
with a tent. This is how you do it.
So then I thought I kind of wanted to go across Canada. I realized there was no guidebook for biking across Canada. So I thought, well, may as well do it. So biked across Canada, wrote the guidebook. It's for sale.
Published a book.
Yeah, for sale nationally at Mountain Equipment Co-op. And
Plug.
Let's plug. And
What's the book called?
Canada by Bicycle. Yeah. And
How many copies sold?
a couple thousand probably, like nothing too insane.
Nobody's crazy enough to do that other than you and a couple thousand other people.
It's a niche market, but I got a call from a guy like a CEO in the States last week who's like, I need to talk to you. And so it's fringe.
How many times has that happened?
Enough. And sometimes I'll see people on the highway, and I'll usually stop and give them a $20 bill and chat with them. And sometimes they have the book with them, and most people know about it. So yeah, I did that. Ended up my bike touring career, biked 40,000 kilometers around the world. Went down the West Coast twice, across Canada, all through Whitehorse to Yellowknife, all through Europe, southern states.
So is that where you learned how to really grind and just to kind of put your mind at it?
I guess so. Yeah, it kind of reprograms you, right? Where you're like, yeah, I mean, I was into marathon running a little bit before that, but definitely bike touring like makes you tough as hell, like,
Right.
Because you just have to wake up every day and bike 100 kilometers, and
Every day,
every
100
day.
kilometers.
It's a lot like entrepreneurship, right? It's just like,
I don't know, man. It seems like it might be harder at times.
it's all right. Depends. If there's nothing else going on, it's fine. Like you can bike at 20 kilometers an hour. So in theory, stay on the bike for 5 hours, takes you 7, and you get there. So, but it's great. It's like the best time of your life. You're outside.
So what are you going to do for your 40th? You going to go on a bike tour somewhere?
No,
Never again.
no. Maybe once the kids get a little bit older, we'll go biking again.
So yeah, 2 girls,
yeah, young family.
wife,
Yeah, wife.
all up in Clear Lake, Manitoba.
Yeah, holding it down. Moved rurally 5 years ago from Winnipeg. Kind of made the decision that we didn't want to be always working to try to get to the lake. We wanted to just live at the lake. So
I remember that.
5 years ago, made the jump. I had always kind of been seasonally there, so had a decent client base. and whatever. One house
So
is better than two houses.
you're so unique in so many ways, but you moved up to Onanole. I remember when you did that, and all of a sudden you just like your brain works in ways that just most people's don't, and you saw an opportunity as an entrepreneur to start buying houses in Erickson and revitalizing that town. Talk to me about Erickson and really what the strategy was there, the nonprofit, everything you've got going on in Erickson, because that is mind blowing in itself. And that's what this is about. Like, this isn't ag per se, but you're in ag, and you certainly are a warrior and never stop. So tell me about Erickson, Manitoba.
So we'd always wanted to move to the lake. You know, where we live right now is Onanole. It's right at the entrance. It's kind of like Manitoba's Canmore, right at the entrance to the park. So we actually bought our first fixer-upper house there. It was a house that probably should have been torn down. Small little story and 3/4. It was $50,000. It's on a nice piece of land. Fixed it. Kind of spent $150,000. And totaled out 100 on rentals, 150 total. So got it rented.
Is that Alice's Palace?
No, that's Rhubarb Ridge, which is next door to my current house. But so we got it rented out for I think $1,000 or $1,100, which kind of got me to break even. And we had a lot of fun doing it. Learned a lot, but break even's not great. It's okay. So then we did it again. Found this property on 4 acres on a little lake. Again, in horrible shape. It was $75,000. Kind of did the same thing. Put 100 into it. Got it rented in the same price point, but it was kind of at break even. And I was like, well, this is fun, but like I can't keep doing this forever because break even is kind of unsustainable. And so my buddy Eric, who's always a big buddy and neighbor, he was an outsider like me. He came from Winnipeg, and he's a crazy entrepreneur. And he's like, we got to go to Erickson. And I was like, no, man. Like, Erickson's rough. It's 10 minutes south of us. And it's like the town with the high school. It's a town with the grocery store, town with the lumberyard. So it's kind of like the major commerce center. But it was rough. There was half of downtown was empty, a lot of vacancy. And there was just like a negative attitude about it. Everyone was kind of like down on it. And Eric just kept bugging me. And I finally just said, okay, like call the realtor. So I called my realtor and I said, let's go look at everything under $100,000 in this town. And found a property that was basically in great shape. It only needed shingles. It was listed at $80,000. We bought it for $75,000, put $5,000 into the shingles. So $80,000. Got it rented immediately for a nice rent rate. You know, we were making $300 a month. And then I was like, okay, here we go. This actually works. And we had a long lineup of people that wanted to rent. Recognized there was housing, insecurity and a lack of vacancy in the community. So from there, I was just like, okay, it's game time. And so Erickson, it was down on its luck. And I was asking people, like, is it a good idea for me to invest in this community? And like community leaders are looking at me being like, it's a horrible idea. You don't want to invest here. Stay away. We're just trying to hold on to the census, blah, blah, blah. But it's like a beautiful little town. It's got a nice main street that like dead ends into a lake. It's 10 minutes from a national park, neighboring First Nation, all the services you need, 45 minutes to Brandon. And the quality of life was good and housing was affordable. And at that point, housing and life, I could just see was becoming unaffordable for the next generation in our big cities. You know, you're spending $400,000 on a small house in Winnipeg or, one of these types of places. And so I just kind of recognized that, okay, our next generation is going to want to consider moving to a rural community. I was thinking
moving back to rural, moving away from urban, back to rural.
And, looking at telecommuting and looking at like all of those types of things. So I just kind of saw it as a trend. I knew people would be seeking out a greater quality of life. I also knew that, Canada was having a national housing shortage, a problem that's become much worse in the last 5 years. And so I just kind of recognized that affordable housing in a good community was going to just be a great asset. So basically, bought that first.
How many do you have now in Erickson?
Oh, in Erickson, probably like a dozen or something. And so basically just started writing offers and buying stuff. We, bought a self-storage facility, bought the old Manitoba Hydro building, bought an old Ukrainian church.
Which is now a concert hall.
It's now a concert hall called the Good Street Hall.
What about the thrift shop? Because that to me is a really cool thing. Like, you know, and again, thinking outside the box, right?
Yeah.
That's what this is about.
So, you know, we're driving into Brandon, my wife and I, and she's on the daycare board, and they needed to raise money. And so we started thinking about how can we raise money? And I was just like, we're not doing chocolate bars. We're not doing like, no chance I'm getting involved in that. And so I'd been a client of Dauphin's Country Fest, which is a nonprofit on the other side of the park. They're, you know, they have an huge annual event that raises money that allows them to use that money to revitalize the community and invest in it. So I was like, as an entrepreneur, I was like, let's solve this through entrepreneurship. And so we kind of came on the idea of a thrift shop. Works well for a variety of reasons. We're diverting from the landfill, promoting tourism, volunteer options, affordable clothing. You know, it's bringing tourists into the community to check it out. And, you know, at the end of the month, there's profit is what we hoped that we could reinvest in the community. So formed a nonprofit, rented this pharmacy building that was empty for 5 years. And that was right in the middle of the pandemic. And we just started renovating it, told everyone what we were up to, and basically kicked it off in the summer of 2020. We've got a board, got a CPA on our board. It's all very legit. And basically that organization, my wife's the executive director. She works a little bit and a lot of volunteers. And it basically is a profitable little organization that we can then invest money back into our nonprofits.
And how much money have you put back into Erickson to revitalize Erickson?
So the Score Store has a two-prong approach that I think is pretty awesome. Number one, we'll just like cut checks to nonprofits. If you need $1,000 for something, or you know you need $250 for a prize at your golf tournament, we will cut that. That's kind of 50%. And then the other 50% goes to what I call economic development activities. So we hired a grant writer to write grants on behalf of our nonprofit. And so the first one that we wrote was on behalf of our local food bank. It was for a food security hub and greenhouse from the federal government. We got a $300,000 grant from them to do new construction on Main Street.
Wow.
Since then, we've you know, put a plan together for mountain biking course and trails at the end of Main Street, raised $150,000 from that. So, you know, we've probably done $500,000 in grants. And then we did a thing called the Business Incubator. So Score Store put in $5,000, the municipality put in $5,000, credit union, community futures, insurance organization kind of came in for another 10. And there was the north side of Main Street, of which I owned one property, was essentially vacant. And we knew that, you know, our Score Store's mandate is to improve the quality of life of everyone in the region. And we knew that for that town to be successful and viable and sustainable, we need to fix the vacancy problem. So we basically said, if a business moves into one of these vacant or underused buildings, that fund would subsidize your rent by 50% for the first year. So an example, I bought this house we called the Meth House.
Why was it called the Meth House?
I don't know. It's a legacy name. It was in very rough shape, and we fixed it up and
I
turned
remember
it into
the before and after of the Meth House.
Yeah, we turned into this like Pinteresty coffee shop, and that allowed us, instead of charging the $10,000 and $1,000 in rent, we could charge her $500. So it made them moving into the community like so easy because it was so affordable. And we think as a municipality and as, you know, we believe that it's a great place to start a business, but it's like, well, put your money where your mouth is, right? If it's guaranteed, then like, let's chip in, right? Because we have to understand these entrepreneurs are taking that risk. So the Business Incubator essentially drove about $500,000 of investment on the north side of Main Street. We started probably 5 or 6 businesses.
Completely one man or two men, because you and Eric.
And there was others.
I know, but really you guys came in and completely changed the town.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, there was others, so I don't want to discount that.
Right.
But
It started with you guys, though.
And my thesis is that towns, like, people get depression, and it doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're like in this little funk. And you know, you'd go through Erickson, and people would be like, "This place is dying." Like, I hear the co-ops closing, like stuff like that. You heard all the time, and now people are like really wanting to move there because it's a great community
and super smart. Because I'm assuming, as you revitalize the town, the property values go up, which makes it harder for you to buy them and rent them out, but means the ones you've already bought have done well.
And now we just have moved to other towns.
Right.
So kind of our work there is done, and
revitalize the town, so one town at a time. So Steve, you know, what's next? Like, you've done all these crazy things, revitalize the town, biked across, across Canada, up and down the West Coast twice. Really, when you think about it, came coming and work with Thunderstruck's the least crazy of all of the things that you've done. What's the next thing for Steve Langston? What's the next outside the box thinking, big idea that you're gonna take a swing at? Because you'll take a swing at anything.
Yeah, if it's measured, I will for sure. So what I'm really excited about right now is, the real estate company's been growing for the last 5 years, and I kind of hit a point where it's like difficult to keep growing that. So I have brought in an outside partner who's a very old friend of mine, who's capital partner, and kind of allows me to now think of things without a capital constraint. So basically, I'm looking at kind of the 100-kilometer radius around my home and looking at opportunities in these rural communities.
So another small town, come in and change that town.
Yeah, and so we, in April of this year in Minnedosa, which is a town that's kind of like 30 minutes south, we bought the old Minnedosa Tribune building, which is a former newspaper. It's 2,500 square feet of commercial on the main floor, 2,500 square feet up top of residential. And so we've been under full renovations on that since April 15th. We're going to be done in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
So Minnedosa is the next town. So
I like Minnedosa. If there's more stuff to buy on Main Street, then certainly. And I mean, there's another town that is just like an incredible town. It's like got a lake, it's got a ski hill, it has mountain biking trails, it's in a nice little valley. It has that small town charm, probably 3,000 population, great independent business community. And people can commute both ways. They can commute to Brandon, they can commute up to the lake, or they can just stay there. And this property was, 5,000 square feet. It was, we purchased it for $70,000. So $14 a square foot, including the land. And
pretty good deal, you'd think.
Well, and it's crazy to me because people are building duplexes up the street for $450,
right?
And getting these 2 units, or they're building a house for $300, or buying a house for $300, and we're taking this thing, we're gonna get it landed for about $75-$80 a square foot, and it'll be essentially like new, and we're gonna rent it out. We have 3 or 4 businesses that are committed for this fall to move in, so. Young entrepreneurs that were kind of like driving to Brandon because there was no commercial space available are coming in. So it's going to make this huge impact on the community. All these, business will now happen there, employment, families, all these positive things. So
that's the next big thing.
The next big thing is I'm kind of done with single family housing.
Right.
And so now the plan is rural communities, downtowns, revitalizing these buildings that are often like beautiful, right? They're like the ones that withstood the time of 100 years.
Well built.
And so
just need some lipstick and a little bit of love.
It's more than lipstick typically, but I mean, there's a national housing crisis, right? So there's no vacancy, especially in a higher interest environment. It's very tough to bring on new supply. So, and we keep bringing 1 million new Canadians in because we need them to get everything done. So there's just so much pressure on housing. Yet no one's willing to tackle this asset class where you can deliver, residential housing very affordably. You can offer entrepreneurs a chance to run their business. So that's really like where I'm headed next. Is
fascinating.
Is revitalizing these downtowns, gut renovating these structures, getting them landed under $100 per square foot, and wash, rinse, repeat. And then I'm still going to be running Dirty T-shirt productions. People kind of are like, do you still do video? I'm just like, oh, yeah, I still do video. Like, none of this happens without the cash flow of, Dirty T-shirt productions. So, and that was part of the reason of bringing a capital partner in it. So I don't necessarily have to run Dirty T at just full velocity all the time.
Maybe take and enjoy the lake once in a while. Enjoy the girls.
Other than just the winter. But,
right.
But yeah, it's all good. That's, when you're hardwired this way, it's kind of like you don't really have a lot of choice. So that's where we're headed next. I'm turning 40 at the end of September, and I'm
gonna have a party, a Thunder party.
There might be a party. Yeah,
might be a party.
We'll see what farm show we end up at. Celebrated then.
Well, that's awesome, Steve. I feel like one episode of AgWarriors is not enough to really dive into everything. I certainly another time the next time you're out here doing something crazy with us, I want to get you back on and talk a little bit about the tree farm, regenerative farming, the crazy idea we've had for the thunder farm. I mean, we could literally talk all day, but I think we save that for another time. I mean, you've been a friend now for, like you said, 5.5 years. You've always been fascinating to me because your brain just works unlike most people, and you think outside the box. And really, people tell you it's stupid. I can relate to this. People tell you it's a bad idea, and you're like, "Hold my beer. I'll show you a bad idea."
I know a bad idea.
I know a bad idea. Yeah. So, thanks for coming and being a part of this. Good luck with Minnedosa, and cheers the Tim Hortons plug. Yeah. Eventually, we're gonna have sponsors and listeners. This will be cool.
Yeah, and it's on. Cool. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Steve.